You're listening to the Road to the Garden podcast, presented by House Enterprise and in partnership with House of College Hoops. Head over to our site, house-enterprise.com, for more info. We've teamed up with SeatGeek this season to get you the best deals for tickets to your favorite team. SeatGeek takes the confusion out of buying tickets, and they're here to give you some great deals. Get in on the fun and head over to SeatGeek, download their app, and use code NCAA Hoops Digest for $20 off your first purchase.
Good evening, Big East fans. Welcome back to the Road to the Garden podcast here. There with that fancy new intro. I'm joined by a whole cast of characters for tonight's show, and it's Final Four week, gentlemen. We got a Big East team in it. We're going to be talking all about the Final Four. Got Tommy on here as always. How you doing tonight, Tommy?
I'm great, Mac. Glad to be back. How are you?
Not too bad. Glad to hear your voice, Tommy. It's been too long.
Yeah. You too. God.
There's Chris the Dinga. How about you, Chris? How's Vegas?
Hey, doing great. Was able to catch the maybe national champion Huskies live in person against Gonzaga. It was awesome. But happy to be back. A little bit lacking of sleep, but nonetheless, happy to be home.
That'll happen.
We will. Yeah. Pushing through it. I love it. And Ryan Cassidy, our UConn guy, a big week here for the Huskies. How you doing?
Good. Thank you so much for having me on. And what an awesome intro. My first time seeing it. Loved it.
Well, thank you very much. Let's get into it. Final Four weekend. The UConn Huskies are in it. They're going to be playing Miami, joined by San Diego State and FAU. We got to see them cut down the net Saturday night here at MSG. That was pretty cool, being there in person for that. Tommy, I think we'll start with you here. What do you just think of first thoughts on this Final Four, and is it good for college basketball to have all of these a whole bunch of smaller schools in the final weekend?
Yeah, I mean, 3 teams are making their Final Four debut. That's the first time that's happened. Wow, look at this, Matt. The production value of this. Sorry, I got distracted for our Spotify listeners here. I just went full screen. I feel special now. But yeah, anyways, back to the show. This is the first time 3 teams are going to be debuting in the Final Four since 1970. Now, personally, this is how it's going to be. I mean, Miami's going to be the poster for this new generation of college basketball. More NIL money, I guess, equals less powerhouses. I'm not sure. I'm, as a basketball fan, like just strictly, I mean, Villanova's out of it. I have no dog in any of the fight. I guess I'll root for UConn because they're in the Big East. But I mean, I'm not waking up on Saturday morning excited to watch FAU versus SDSU. I mean, it's a decent FAU team against a really good defensive team in San Diego State. Like that, I'd rather watch last year, like Duke, North Carolina, Kansas, Villanova, like the Blue Blood Final Four. I'd rather watch that. I mean, I think the NBA showed us that the ratings are going to be better for a Final Four like that. But I don't like to get in, like the ratings police and everything like that. But yeah, I don't know. I'd rather watch an all Blue Blood Final Four, something like that. But I guess we'll see how this year turns out.
Yeah, Tommy, I'm going to disagree with you and say that a Dusty May versus Brian Dutcher Final Four is a lot more intriguing than North Carolina versus Duke. I think it's really fun. I think it's good for the game. A lot of people thought transfer portal and NIL stuff would lead to less parity, and we've seen, at least in a 1-year sample size, the exact opposite. A 9 seed in the Final Four, a 5 seed, a 4 seed, a 5 seed. So I think it's great. I think it's great for the game. And who cares about the viewership? You're right, though. Like, it won't bring in the non-diehard college basketball people. Like, we're seeing the women's Final Four, which, Caitlin Clark versus South Carolina is going to be an awesome game. And people that don't watch a bunch of women's hoops are going to watch that, where FAU versus SDSU is not going to bring that appeal, but I don't care. That's an awesome basketball game. I am 100% here for it.
Yeah, Chris, I hear where you're coming from, and I think as a basketball purist, I would want to agree, but I think that there's also something to be said for having your best players in the sport in the biggest games, and not having guys like, Brandon Miller and Zach Edey and Marcus Sass are not in these games with the highest viewers, with the most amount of eyes on them. You wonder what that does for the sport long term. You can't be anything but happy, but for Brian Dutcher and for Dusty May, and that's awesome for those programs. And obviously Florida Atlantic, this is a dream season for them. But college basketball as a whole, there has to be some desire to get those national celebrities into these games and allow them to show off their product, their top tier product to the country.
I think there's this really interesting dynamic too, because usually when you're in this spot, it feels like there's a Cinderella, and that brings in viewers. People want to see that story. I don't know if FAU qualifies as that. I think they're too good. They're a single digit seed. They won a lot of games this year. It's not that shocking. I mean, they came from almost the same spot in the bracket that UNC came from last year. So it's this really weird mix where they don't qualify as a Cinderella, so you're not going to get the viewers. What I do think this sets up, though, is a possible national championship where you get kind of a small, lesser-known school against a school that's known really well, and I think that is appealing. I think having kind of two of the smaller schools on one side of the bracket, and FAU and San Diego State, and Miami and UConn on the other side, two teams that, they could throw around some money, as we have seen, and they're going to get some players to come there. I think it sets up an interesting storyline. But yeah, it's some of the past years where we've had groupings kind of like this in the Final Four, it's turned out to be underwhelming. You just get there, it ends up being blowouts. The team you thought was going to win ends up winning it, and everybody moves on, and that's it. You kind of forget about the last weekend of the tournament.
Yeah, I completely agree with what Ryan said, and there were points that Chris had that I also agree with, but I mean, it just boils down to wanting to see the best players on the biggest stage. I was reading an article earlier from Nicole Auerbach. I mean, March Madness in and of itself isn't like the field of 68, just not a great way to crown like a true champion. Like baseball, you get a 7-game series. Hockey, I don't know what hockey is, 5 or 7. Matt, let me know. 7, cool. Don't watch hockey. I know you do. But it's fun. It's chaos. I mean, that's what like the diehard people are. You could walk down the street in New York City, 5 people would know who Brian Dutcher and Dusty May are on like a whole block, maybe. So, I mean, I think, for the true basketball diehard fans, this is going to be amazing. Like, I'm going to enjoy watching this game. But if I were to talk to any of my relatives about it, they'd think I'm like a psycho, like getting excited to watch this game.
No, I agree completely with you, Tommy. And, I've had that conversation too, that honestly, if we wanted to find the best team in college basketball, we would have, best of 5 series between the top, 12, 16 seeds, and you do a bracket that way. March Madness obviously brings a lot more entertainment value, and that's awesome, and that's very valuable in its own right, but it's definitely not the most clear-cut way to find the best team.
One more thing I guess I'll throw out there for the mid-major lovers. I am more excited for FAU SDSU than I have ever been for any Final Four game. I want to see one of them compete for a national championship. It's going to be a blast. So yeah, that's where I'm at.
Yeah. I think we look back on this weekend very differently depending on how the games go too. If FAU comes out of this and wins it, we're going to say, wow, that was awesome. But it ends up being UConn and they continue to do what this team has been doing the entire tournament, then we're going to say, wow, they got an easy path and the Final Four wasn't that entertaining and it's not going to get great ratings and people are going to forget about it. So I think whether or not it's good for the sport is going to be determined based on how the games turn out, which it's a pretty good way to do it. When I talk about UConn being dominant in there, we'll segue to this team and what UConn has done here in the bracket to get to this point to the Final Four. Last weekend, 2 wins that were both utter domination. They never trailed against Arkansas, led by as many as 29, won that one 88-65. And they play Gonzaga. Timmy gets into foul trouble in that one. Jordan Hawkins goes off. He hits 20 points, 6 of 10 from deep. Snogo, 10 and 10. He had a double-double, 10 assists, 9 rebounds, 8 points from Andre Jackson. So almost a triple-double for him. They won that one 82-54. UConn now 15-0 against non-conference opponents. The average margin of victory on those games is by 25.5 points. That's what UConn's been doing to these teams all year, and they're going to look to continue it Saturday night against Miami. 8:49 Eastern approximately is when that one is going to tip off down in Houston. And if they get through that one, they'll play Monday night at 9:20 Eastern. Why do we do the tip-off so late on a Monday night against San Diego State or FAU, looking for their 5th championship in UConn history? Ryan, I want to start with you here because we talked earlier this season about how UConn was kind of going through that rough patch back in January, and they finished tied for 4th in the Big East after looking like the best team in the country. Now they look like the best team in the country once again. What's been the key for getting the Huskies back on track?
So, like, there's got to be multiple factors involved in this, and guys who are paid a lot more money than me are going to go through all of those things. But for me, the things that stood out the most is a quote from Danny Hurley when they started getting back on track. And he said the most important thing was getting back to our identity as a defense and rebounding team. Now, these Huskies just held the number 1 rated offense in the country to 54 points. That is their season low in points in the most important game that they're going to play all season. They're winning the offensive rebounding battle in every game of the NCAA tournament. They won it down the stretch in the last month. And so I think that the defensive intensity has turned up, where it kind of lagged a little bit in the middle of the season. They've put more emphasis on hitting the boards and out rebounding. And they can score in transition. They can score off offensive rebound, and they're going to score enough that if they do those two things really well, they're going to be in really good shape for the game.
Yeah, I can go ahead here. One thing that I think I'll go 2 things that I think go a little bit under the radar with UConn because they have played sensational. And I think a lot of it is because of the Big East being a very physical league. More physical than a lot of people give it credit for, and they've just out-muscled other teams in the tournament so far. Like Gonzaga, they couldn't even get into their stuff offensively, with or without Timmy, just because they were not comfortable with UConn's physicality, in my opinion. Another thing is they have gotten, and credit to Hurley, he mentioned this after their game against Gonzaga, is they've gotten Andre Jackson into spots offensively where he can succeed. And that's something I don't think they did as well of a job in late December and early January when they were struggling. And then Alex Karaban has been a lot better defensively than he was at that time too. He's grown up. He understands how to play against really, really good offensive threats. And he has no longer been a weakness for them defensively, where he very much was. And I think that was exploited by Big East teams, and it was corrected, and UConn has made adjustments.
Yeah, I mean, taking points away from the both of you, I did some digging, and Gonzaga shot its worst field goal percentage in the game against UConn since 2010 at 33%, and its worst 3-point percentage since 2012 at 10%.
Wow.
I mean, UConn has one of the best defenses in the country. I think they're really finding their stride here a little bit. These guys are stepping up for UConn. It's not that I don't think they flipped a switch. I mean, they've always had these guys who are just stepping up. Joey California stepping up. Like Chris said, Karaban on the defensive end. He's always been an asset on the offensive end. The defensive end stepping up. Klingon coming in, grabbing 50 rebounds a game, whatever it is. He's a monster. Him providing valuable minutes off the bench. I mean, everything's shaping up for this UConn team. Dan Hurley's done an amazing job. Say what you want about him. He's been outstanding this postseason. And I mean, they're just hitting their stride at the perfect time.
Yeah, and I think the thing that stood out to me too, I go back to that game at Georgetown, a game that was close, and a game that really shouldn't have been close with how Georgetown was this year. When the game came down to the final minutes, they had the guys step up to make plays that they needed to be doing that. And I think you could see some confidence come out of that performance. Andre Jackson is the guy I look at specifically in that game. He shut out Primo Spears in that one. And in a game you win by single digits and something like that, holding the leading scorer of the other team to no points. That's kind of the difference between winning and losing. You make some winning plays down the stretch. And I think after that, you had the Seton Hall game. They won. I think they looked better. And then I think around the Providence game, that's when it really started to come back on in full strength. They've been playing like the best team in the country now for probably the last 2 months. It just went under the radar because of what happened back in January. So the next question on that one, because they've been playing just so incredibly well here. Chris, if you're Dan Hurley right now and you're looking ahead to this weekend, the possible opponents in a game against Miami, what's keeping you up at night? What's got you worried? What's got you thinking, hey, what happens if this looks like the January team again?
Well, Pack and Wong as a duo kind of presents some challenges on the defensive end. Defense for UConn, obviously. They're just so fast and quick and can score at all levels of the game. So if you can shut down the backcourt play, or at least limit the backcourt play of Miami, which no team has been able to do so far in the tournament. I mean, Texas got torched from 3. Houston got torched from 3 from those guys. So if you can limit the backcourt play, UConn's going to win the game. If you can't, it'll be tight. But this Miami relies, I would go and venture to say, they rely less on the front court play than anyone else UConn has seen in the tournament. So Klingon and Sanogo being massive defensive stoppers is going to mean slightly less in this one.
Tommy?
Yeah, I mean, this Miami team just finds ways to get it done. They're 18-2 when they score 79 points or more, and their 2 losses were on a buzzer beater and in overtime. Like what Chris said, this team relies heavily on the backcourt with Pack and Wong. Now, what I'm going to say here, I don't want it to get misconstrued because there's no such thing as an easy path to the Final Four. But, I mean, Iona, St. Mary's was an awful matchup against this UConn team. Arkansas was the 9th best team in the SEC. Like, you get my point. Like, they haven't been through a gauntlet yet, and they've done what they had to do. I mean, they've won every game by an average of 23 points. So, I mean, this Miami team is not like any team that they've played this year. They score in bunches. They're amazing from the free throw line. They play with confidence and efficiency. This is going to be a tough game for the UConn Husky. There's going to be a lot of runs in this game. There's going to be a lot of fouls, a lot of free throws. But I think the first team to get to 80 is going to win this one.
First team to get to 80. Interesting. Ryan, you agree that it's going to be first team to 80?
I think the Huskies can win without getting to 80. I think if they get to 80, they're pretty safe. These guys hit on some really great points. And I just will add that Miami relies on a lot of pretty low percentage 2-point shots that they hit at a high percentage because they have 2 of the best guards, 2 of the best shot makers in the country in Wong and Pack. Kind of reminds you a little bit of Teddy Allen last year. You know, a guy who can hit really tough shots. If those guys are on, UConn will need to be at their best to counter it.
Yeah, the lights are very bright. This is when you got to be playing their best. And I think you also want to hope you don't lose momentum with this week off. And you don't want the lights to get too bright for these guys. I don't think they will. I think we've already seen them perform in some big spots this year. But we're not that far removed from losing to Marquette in the Big East tournament. And that was a close game. But they can all be close games. I don't think this UConn team is completely invulnerable. But yeah, they got some interesting matchups here. We'll talk about who we think is going to win them in a second. We'll make some predictions. But before we get there, I know, Ryan, this is a question that you've kind of been throwing around here. And so we'll debate it here on the podcast. UConn or Marquette? Whose season would you rather have if you're a fan? Ryan, I know this is your question, so I want to start with you. I want to hear your answer first.
So this question started off as an argument between me and my brother because we were calling each other dumb. So that's why we kicked it to Twitter to hear, we had to get the democracy involved. Now, with the Final Four, I'm taking UConn. But before the Final Four, just with the Elite Eight, I said give me the Marquette season. Regular season champions, Big East tournament champions, player of the year, coach of the year. You get to watch that team for 20 games dominate, and then they dominate another 3 games in the tournament. So I think those 2 banners, along with the personal accolades, I think that outweighs an Elite Eight run. But I want to hear what you guys think.
Tommy?
I'm going to go with UConn's here with the Elite Eight as well. I mean, Ryan, you made some great points. I'm almost playing devil's advocate here. But, I mean, I think in the long haul, when you look back at it, especially with the Final Four, when you debate these teams like in just the wide range scope of college basketball. Like we're not talking about like, oh, Duke has like 15 conference championships or whatever they have. I mean, it's what you do in March and March Madness. And no, that's not a shot at Marquette. I mean, they swept everything this year. They had an incredible regular season. UConn's had an incredible. I mean, UConn's had a great season except for like those 1 month of January. But yeah, I mean, I'd take UConn. I'd take UConn's future. I'm not sure if that's part of the question. They both have extremely bright futures. Like everyone on Marquette's a sophomore. But I think it was you who tweeted it out earlier, Ryan. I think UConn has 4 or 5 stars coming in next year, top 10 recruiting class. So I'd take UConn's, but I'd sign up for either any day.
We're all on agreement that with the Final Four appearance, it's 100% UConn, right? Yeah. Okay. No, Matt?
No.
Are you kidding me? No way.
Do you want to? I'll explain myself here.
Please.
My reasoning is this. Marquette has gotten to lift 2 different trophies this season, and I think those trophies, the Final Four trophy means a lot, and I know that. But 2 Big East trophies, I think, is significant. UConn has also gotten to lift 2 trophies with the Phil Knight back in the non-conference. I think we can all agree of the 4 that is the least significant here. But I think a regular season trophy means a lot, especially in the context of Marquette's program getting the solo one for the first ever time. And I also think part of this is when you look at what the Final Four is for UConn and the path in front of them and the way that they have played, if it's just the Final Four and not the national championship, you are going to be kind of left with a bad taste in your mouth. The opportunity is there for more, and you will feel like you've fallen short. To have a team that's that good and to not make the Big East championship and to get bested there, and then let's say they lose to Miami and it is just the Final Four, you will have lost 1 game away from 2 championship appearances with a team that was good enough to win both of them. I think that leaves a bad taste in your mouth in the way that Marquette's season maybe doesn't. And then you also add in how Marquette did it with a couple thrilling finishes there against Xavier and then against Creighton. And I think from a fan perspective, that's really entertaining to watch. I'd put them on about even ground right now, but if I had to pick, it's 51-49 Marquette.
That's an interesting take. I like that. I mean, I was watching The Bachelor, whatever last night. Shout out Bachelor with a Bro, House Enterprise. And we were talking like to the craziest comparison of all time. Like, would you rather like go all the way, get your heart broken, be the bridesmaid, not the bride? Or would you rather get sent home the first weekend? I to Matt's point, I think, I don't know. I guess they had whatever Marquette did in the regular season. I mean, they did. They lifted 2 trophies, and then, they got sent home in the round of 32, whatever. But, I mean, I don't know. I'm going to take UConn. I think what you do in March matters more. Also, shout out Phil Knight.
Yeah, one last point from me here on this one. UConn this season has proven they can beat and have beat anyone they have played. Marquette cannot say the same.
Except for Xavier.
Apologies.
And almost Georgetown at one time.
Yeah. But there was a reason both Tommy and I were not very optimistic in Marquette's chances to advance in the tournament. Yes, both Big East crowns mean a whole lot, but UConn, in my opinion, has had a more impressive season, right? They were the number 1 team in the country at one point, and they might be the number 1 team in the country at the end of the year. So
were they number 1 in the AP? I thought, or was that just Ken Palm?
I believe AP.
No, they were just
2?
number 2 because Houston.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I rescind it. Then yes, Marquette for sure.
Can I ask a follow-up question? Do we have time, Matt?
Yeah, let's go for it.
Do you think we overvalue success in the NCAA tournament as a college basketball community?
To a degree, yes. Like what Tommy mentioned, I don't think it's a good way to measure who the best team is. Unless it partially depends on your definition of best. If your best is a team that is really hard to prepare for in a short prep, then it is a good way in some ways. But I don't know. I mean, I don't think we should undervalue the regular season. I think winning a regular season championship is hard to do, to be that good over a sustained period of time, test your depth in a different way, test your ability to change what you do and to adjust throughout the season. And I don't know, I think we should place more. I don't know if we overvalue the postseason as much as we undervalue what goes on in the regular season. Plus, the regular season takes up so much of our time. That's longer. We cover that for so long, and I think we should give it the respect it deserves.
Yeah, I agree with everything Matt said. I mean, a banner's a banner at the end of the day that you get to hang up in your home arena. I mean, I don't think we overvalue what we do in March. I think that's appropriately valued. I think we should value more what we do in the regular season when we're comparing these teams.
Ryan,
Okay.
did you have any thoughts on that? Or
No, I think that's great stuff. I think I tend to agree with you. I think if I were to play devil's advocate, there are disproportionately more eyes on the game in March. So
Yes.
winning when people are paying attention counts for a lot. And
I think
that's why,
yeah.
Some people will say I'd rather win 2 games in the NCAA tournament than win the regular season in the Big East. We've seen that opinion on Twitter recently, and there's definitely people out there who feel that way.
Well, and I think part of it also depends on like preseason expectations around your program. If Marquette had been picked to finish first in the Big East, I wouldn't have given the answer that I said. Overperforming expectations. I mean, just think about it as a fan. If you're a dominant team, it's fun to watch, but it's also incredibly stressful. And I feel like in some ways less rewarding when you win because the expectation is you're going to win. And if you don't match that, you just come away disappointed. And Marquette they overachieved all season long what people expected of them. And I think that thrill and the joy that comes with that, I don't know, I think that is exciting in a different way.
Yeah, I think Chris could speak to that. Creighton had their first Elite Eight in program history, and it's still, there's still some people who view it as a letdown because of the preseason expectations.
Yeah. Here, you know what? Here's a follow-up question on this. We'll go down to the next couple teams. Would you rather have Creighton's season or Xavier's season?
Creighton. Right.
Creighton.
For the Elite Eight?
What Xavier has the Big East tournament championship.
They made it to the championship appearance.
And they came in second in the regular season. But neither of those are banners, so give me the Elite Eight.
And as a Creighton fan, I know what it is to feel like, oh, what could have been had X injury not happened. And that's not a super
had COVID
fun feeling. Right.
Had COVID not happened.
So Xavier losing Fremantle, that's going to sting him. I would rather have had Creighton season for sure.
I agree.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think I'd also pick Creighton. The only thing that gives me pause on that is that losing streak earlier and kind of the deflation from where you were before that to where the team ended up after that. I think Creighton was a really good team all year and beat some good teams and made it to the Elite Eight and maybe within a hand there of the Final Four. We are going to be talking about that call. We are going to get into that. But before we do, it's prediction time. And we'll predict the whole weekend. We're going to ask the question here, does UConn win a national championship? Before I throw it to you guys, I'll just give you the history here. 4 previous UConn championships, 99, 2004, 2011, 2014. Ryan, you might be able to answer this. I'll throw this out as a trivia time. Can anybody name the 4 teams that UConn has beaten to win national championships?
Are we doing it one by one?
Shout it out, whatever you know.
Well, we beat Butler because Gordon Hayward almost. Duke in 99?
Yep, you got 2. I'll tell you, I probably would have been able to guess 3 of these. The 04 one, I had no idea.
Was it Kentucky in 11? Or was that the Final Four?
It was Kentucky. So 2004 is the only one you have left. If anybody can get this, I'm going to be very impressed. Give you one more second, Ryan. All right. Georgia Tech.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. Those are the 4 teams. If they do it again, it's going to be San Diego State or Florida Atlantic University. I don't think anybody would have predicted that before this season. Tommy, we're going to start with you. Does UConn get it done?
I think whoever wins, excuse me, I think whoever wins this game is going to be the de facto national champion against either the other two teams. But I don't know. This game is going to be so tough. I feel like we're going to know real early on. I mean, Miami's so good offensively. UConn's so good defensively. To cut all the nonsense out, I do think UConn does win this game. I do think they win a national championship, but I'm not ready to Sharpie it in. Like, I'm not ready to start engraving the trophy yet. Like I see a lot of other people do on Twitter. Let's pump the brake. Miami's a very good team. Like, they've been dominant all year long. We're talking about regular season success. They won the ACC, a Power 6 conference. So, I mean, yeah, or co-champions at least in the regular season with Pitt, I believe, but neither here nor there. Miami's a very good team. This is going to be a really tough test, but I think UConn's playing so well right now. They got all the pieces you need. I think they get it done.
Chris, are you in agreement here with Tommy?
I'm going back and forth. I do think they kind of handle Miami with ease. Miami's good. It's not a slight against them, but with how UConn's playing, they are clearly the better team to me. And then you get in that championship game, and that's where I have some pause because both Florida Atlantic and San Diego State are both really, really good. If it's San Diego State, I like UConn's odds better, just because kind of same mentality, right? Very physical, gritty teams, except UConn's shot making is simply better. Florida Atlantic does pose some more unique problems that I think it could give UConn some trouble, and you get Gaffney revenge game in that spot. But no, I will go with UConn, but it's tough for me.
Ryan, is your team doing it for the fifth time?
So I'm going to say on the far side of the bracket, I really like San Diego State. I love their defense. Mensa is the real deal as their anchor there. I think that they'll move to the national championship game. I like UConn over Miami. I think UConn's just too well-rounded right now for Miami in terms of they're going to be able to slow them down defensively, and then they should be able to score enough. And then if it's UConn, San Diego State, yeah, I like the Huskies. I think just well-rounded is the word for them right now. They rebound, they score in transition, they defend the ball, they shoot the ball. Can you name a weakness on the team right now?
No, I really don't think you can. I'm going with UConn here. I think if they get through Miami, they end up getting it done. FAU does provide an interesting matchup there. They might be the team most similar to like Xavier on the offensive end that's left here that might be able to cause some of those matchup issues with the passing. But I think if the current UConn team played today against Xavier, I think they'd probably get a win there too. I think the way they're playing, they've adjusted to some of the things. And the second half of that home game against Xavier, they were the better team by far. They made the adjustments they needed to make. I do think the Huskies get it done. I think we're going to see a Big East national champion first year without Jay Wright. And we might actually see this happen. One final note on this before we move on to Creighton. The X factor for me right now is going to be Jordan Hawkins. He is shooting 51.6% from deep in the tournament right now. Nobody else is hitting shots. If he plays like that, he's the best player. I think he'd be the best player in the Final Four, period. And he'll be the reason they win. All right, Chris, it's time to move on to your team here. Creighton Blue Jays. Their season ends, unfortunately, on Sunday afternoon. Blue Jays fall to San Diego State 57-56 in a game that came down to the slimmest of margins. Creighton down late. Baylor Shireman intercepts a perfectly placed inbounds pass for the layup. San Diego State comes down the other end, draws the foul, and wins the game at the line. It's a controversial foul. Chris, you're a Creighton guy. What was going through your mind when that happened, and do you agree with the call?
Boy, was it a foul, and do I agree with it? In my eyes, are different questions. Was it a foul without regard to the rest of that basketball game? Maybe, sure, yeah, I can get on board with that. But that was a physical game, man. They only called 9 fouls, I think, against Creighton the entire game, and Creighton was playing tough, and so was San Diego State, and they let them play for the most part. And then to call that at the end was just a bummer. I would have rather seen Then go to overtime and let the players decide with 5 more minutes. That was my biggest gripe, is that if you're an official, I think in that situation, you should just let the players decide the game instead of you deciding it. I think, was it a foul is a completely different thing. And a lot of people would disagree with me there, but I think you have to have situational awareness and awareness of game flow to answer that question. So no, I don't think they should have called it, but there was a lot of things that Creighton did wrong in that game to lose. I'm not going to blame the official for the loss, right? Creighton, it was like their 7th worst effective field goal percentage since 2010 in a game, which remarkably bad. They had 1 total shot from all the bench players. Some questionable run there. Francisco Farabello only played like 6 minutes after playing a couple of really great games in a row. There was a lot of things they could have done and didn't do, but yes, I think they made the wrong call there.
You guys agree? Wrong call?
Yeah, 100%. I'm gonna go ahead and say what Chris can't say, because he did a great job putting on his little PR face. That was a horseshit call. I mean, that's not a foul for 39 minutes and 39 seconds of that game, and then it all of a sudden is. I mean, it's a ticky-tack foul to begin with. The hand on the hip. I mean, I'm an Eagles fan. It reminded me of that James Bradbury play in the Super Bowl that decided that game. No, it's a shame that game was decided by that. It wasn't decided by that. That's not the reason UConn lost. I mean, it sucks. It's a bad call. Andrew Nemhard can't put himself in a position to get that call, but that can't be called in that situation. I would need Chris did a great job breaking that down, from his perspective, especially as a Creighton guy. I mean, I need a Grippy Sox vacation if that happened as a Villanova guy. So great job, Chris, there, but I was livid that was called.
Ryan, are we going 3 for 3 on this being a bad call here?
Oh, 100%. And Chris hit the nail right on the head. It's just a bad call. And Jay Wright explained it so well after the game. He said, there's an expectation of how the game's going to be called after the first 10 minutes. And, the refs will talk to the players and say, hey, I'm going to call this. Don't put your 2 hands on him. I'm calling that today. And there's that expectation that there's going to be consistency. And, I likened it for baseball fans out there. If the ump's calling the inside strike, there's the expectation that he's calling the inside strike both ways. But you can't call the inside strike the whole game and then 3-2, bottom of the 9th, bases loaded, you call it a ball, right? You have to have consistency throughout the game. He wasn't consistent. It's a bad call. I don't care what the letter of the rule was. And it's a damn shame that those kids were sent home instead of getting to play 5 minutes to decide who the better team was.
Yeah, it's definitely an anticlimactic ending to the game. Chris, I do want to push back on one of the things that you said about letting the players decide it. I do disagree on that a little bit here, and only for one reason. Ryan Nemhard got beat on the play. If this was a real ticky-tack foul where he's reaching up to try to block the shot and he gets a finger, I would kind of agree with that. But I think he got faked out by the move there. He gets beat going to the basket, and he's trying to make up for it from behind. And that's where you get into trouble. And I think if you're in a position where it's a tied game, there's less than 5 seconds left on the clock, and you find yourself with your hand on the shooter while he's in the air, something has gone wrong. And I get why you do that, but I also think if you're leaving it up for the officials to decide whether or not to blow the whistle, and we're arguing whether or not it's the right call, you've put yourself in a bad position anyway. And that's what makes this thing so tough. I don't really agree with the call based on how everything else was. I fully agree with everything else you guys said, but they were losing for most of the last 7 minutes of the game. You're playing from behind. You get 1 total shot attempt from your bench. I had noticed that too, Chris. No points from your bench in a game like that. That's why you lost. You put yourself in the position where you're hoping you get something from the outside that helps you, and when it doesn't, that's the way the cookie crumbles sometimes.
Yeah, Ryan, I thought the baseball analogy was fantastic. That's a really good way to put it.
Yeah, that was
one last Creighton thing. I don't know if we're spending any more time on that or not, but
I got a couple questions on it, but you can go.
Okay, well, Ryan Kalkbrenner started 5 of 6 in that game, ended in 8 of 17. So 3 for his last 11 from the floor. That's the number 1 field goal shooter in the entire country. Just weird stuff like that where Creighton just didn't play up to how they have been playing. And it's just a real bummer because that team, seeing how the path was going, it certainly looked like they were ripe for, a shot at a national championship. So.
And I think the lack of depth caught up with them down the stretch. I mean, play good defense, a team that's physical, and I thought they lost their legs over the last 7 minutes of the game. And it's who this team was. I said in our show previewing the bracket, my issue with Creighton was I thought they'd be a good team, but they might just end up a tiny bit short and unlucky again in one of these close games, in large part because of the fact that they just don't have that one other guy they can turn to. Their starting five is arguably the best starting five in all of college basketball. It's certainly top three. Evan Maya, I'm sure you saw it, Chris, put out some metrics earlier about this, but the best 5-man lineups. And Creighton was right up there. You have a sixth guy, this team is absolutely in the Final Four. That is for sure. Now, that being said, what do you guys think this season kind of means for the program in the grand scheme of things? Chris, I do want your answer, but Tommy, I'll come to you first on this one. What do you think this means for Creighton to make it to the Elite Eight?
I think it means a lot. I mean, anytime that you, like we've been talking about all night, anytime that you have success in March, it's great. I mean, the whole landscape of college basketball is changing with the portal, with the NIL. I saw the other day there's over 1,000 names in the portal right now, which is beyond crazy. But yeah, I mean, for the program, it's huge that you can do it. You have been there. It's going to be great for the guys coming in. It's going to be a great selling point for recruits, and most importantly, it's great for the conference.
Chris?
Yeah, the last few years we're building to this moment, right? Creighton's one of just a handful of programs with NCAA tournament wins the last 3 tournaments, and they had a real shot this year. And they get Shireman in the portal, and everyone sticks around. Where maybe Kaluma could have left, maybe different things could have happened. Nobody transferred, and yeah, they battled adversity throughout the entire year. Everybody kind of gave up on them after that 6-game stretch, at least on a national level. And they proved that they were a very good basketball team. And yeah, just fell a bit short. But this season absolutely 100% should not be looked at as a disappointment for Creighton in any way. Yeah, I'm very proud of that program.
Yeah, just really happy for all the Creighton fans out there. For the Creighton players, you made history. You went to the first Elite Eight. You broke a glass ceiling. So the idea that it's a failure in any capacity, it's just not right. You had at least one upset over Baylor in the NCAA tournament. You played great games against North Carolina State. You beat the Cinderella story in Princeton, and you took it right down to the wires to San Diego State. So fantastic season for Creighton, and just better things to come for them.
Yeah, it's a lot to be happy about. A lot of really good moments for the Blue Jays this year, and I think, yeah, I agree with all of you. You gotta take that and run with it. Yeah, we'll see what this team looks like for next season. Chris, what can Creighton bring back for next year, and who is still up in the air?
It's certainly sounding like all 5 starters are still up in the air. I had thought 2 weeks ago that Baylor Shireman leaving was a given. And now it certainly seems like he's at least thinking about returning, and everybody's thinking about returning. I think they probably end up with 2 or 3, probably 3 of the this year's starters still on the cast next year. So we'll see. I'm curious your guys' thoughts as outsiders of Creighton, but yeah, if they brought back 3 of those first 5, I would consider that a success.
So I will just add, I have had a chance to speak with Baylor Shireman after the end of the year. And it certainly sounded as if he hasn't made his mind up about whether he's coming back. So it seems to be on the table.
That would be huge for Creighton to get him back. I mean, the starting 5 is fantastic. The more of those guys you can get back, the better.
Yeah, I mean, experience wins in March. So I was not aware that they had that many people that were willing and able to come back. But I mean, if you can bring back that core, man, like Matt said, get that 6th, maybe 7th guy off the bench. I mean, this is a team that we're going to be talking about this time next year.
Yeah. One that absolutely could win a national championship under the right conditions next season. We'll see what it looks like. They were not the only Big East team to see their season end this past weekend. Right, Ryan, did you want to jump in there?
Yeah, I was just wondering, do we have an idea of who the best pro prospect from Creighton is at the end of this year? If there is a guy who's going to go pro, not because of age, I know Shireman because of age, but just in general, who would be a potential draft pick?
Yeah, I think Trey Alexander has raised his stock quite a bit over the last month and a half. From my eyes, it's sounding like he has the best chance to get drafted higher than the rest.
Okay, so he's probably the one to keep the eye on.
Yeah.
And we'll see what happens there. And he's not the only guy from this weekend who may be looking towards the NBA. Look at the other team. Just had their season end. That would be Xavier ending there in the Sweet 16 at the hands of Texas. Not a great game. A tough game there for Xavier, who will now you look at the transfer portal. They've had a lot of guys throw their names in there. We're going to talk about the portal again at the end of this show. But a Sweet 16 here for Xavier. You get 2 wins and then a loss in both postseason tournaments here for the Musketeers. Obviously a tough loss, one that did not go, I think, the way they thought it was going to go against Texas. Ryan, we'll start with you on this. What are your takeaways from year one of the second Sean Miller era on was that Victory Boulevard, or I'm trying to remember the name of the road, but yeah, out at Xavier.
I think it has to be just another outstanding success with season in the Big East. Another one that we're talking about. This Xavier team is mostly the team that went to the NIT last year, didn't even make the NCAA tournament, and then you add a new coach and then a point guard from Conference USA. Kind of a not really a known quantity, especially playing in the Big East. And to take them to the Sweet 16, to take them to be the number 2 seed coming out of the Big East regular season, take them to the Big East Tournament Championship. Those players played their ass off, and that coach coached his ass off. And if you're a Xavier fan, you have to be looking at the future and just really excited to see what comes.
Tommy?
Yeah, I mean, for Sean, like exactly what Ryan said, I took a lot of my stuff. A great point. For Sean Miller, year one, part 2, year one. I mean, this wasn't even really his team. He got, he wants to build this team around defense. And I mean, the offense looking like that year one was incredible. He's going to get his guys in here. I know Kirk Reese is messing around at like Nebraska or something, just trying to drive up his NIL. Like Kirk Reese is not going to Nebraska. He's just wasting time before he reunites with Sean Miller. Let's be real here. But yeah, year one, Sean Miller at Xavier. This team has a bright future, as do a lot of these teams in this league. Shout out Jerome Hunter fan club, not in the chat tonight. But he's like,
I hope he's doing all right.
He's doing great. Have you seen? I mean, you got people like local reporters. John Fans is tweeting at him. He's like a celebrity. He's too cool for us now, Matt. Jerome Hunter's acknowledging Jerome Hunter fan club.
Yeah, he has. He's become a bit of a big deal there. I guess he's big time in us. Can't show up on the show. I see what it is there. Chris, any last thoughts here on Xavier as they hit the offseason?
Not really. Sean Miller has built the building blocks and foundation to what he wants the culture to be moving forward, and he did it really well. So kudos to the guys for buying into that. It sets them up for some successful seasons moving down the line.
Yeah. And after last season, I think smashing success here for Xavier. And that's the teams in the tournament here for the Big East. But we got some news from some of the other teams. We talked last Monday's episode, obviously the big news about Ed Cooley moving from Providence to Georgetown. We talked about Rick Pitino. The opening in Providence has since been filled. We're doing this Tuesday night. Tomorrow morning, they're making the official first announcement. It's going to be Kim English, the former George Mason coach. He's the new head man for the Friars. Spent 2 years at George Mason, record of 34-29 as a head coach there. Spent time at Tennessee, Colorado, and Tulsa as an assistant. Played 4 years at Missouri. He was a second-round pick by the Pistons in 2012. I'll just kind of throw this up to the group, whoever wants to take it. First thoughts on the hire of Kim English?
I mean, he was under Mike Anderson, Matt, right?
3 years under Mike Anderson at Mizzou.
Wow. How about that? I mean, he did a great job. He set some program records at George Mason. My favorite Kim English thing here is wait for Matt to see the bottom. He's got to look up.
Oh my goodness. Yes, there we go. Mindset.
#mindset. Yeah. No, I think Kim English, he's trying to build a culture. I absolutely love what he said. Like, I think it was his first day coming in, and behind all of his like teenage girl Visco Instagram stories that he posts, he was like, I'm trying to get this team fired up. Like, I don't want us to feel sad, like feel bad for ourselves. Like, I want to bring the energy. I want this fan base to be amped up. Like, I love that from Kim English. Bring the energy, build a culture, go win some damn games.
Yeah, I love Kim English. The one thing I will say is he matches the Providence fan base's energy. He is not afraid to, let it eat a little bit on the floor. He's had some technicals in his very short coaching career, and I think Providence fans will really buy into him and the way he approaches building a program. Also, in the transfer portal era, he's very much a player's coach, and I think he'll have a lot of success of getting attention from players to go to Providence College.
Yeah, I know he's definitely known as a promoter of programs. He drives engagement from the student body, which obviously Providence has some experience with, from he who shall not be named. Interesting to, Matt and I talked a little bit about some of his X's and O's coming. He does a lot of 5-out stuff. He wants to shoot a lot of threes. Kind of interesting, different than what we're seeing in the Big East right now. So always interesting to see a new style make its way into the Big East. I'm imagining something like the Citadel or Alabama a couple of years ago when they set the record for most 3-point shots taken. So it'll be interesting for sure.
Yeah, and he talked about it his last season there, second year at George Mason. 2 of his best shooters were hurt, so he wasn't able to do what he wanted on offense. His first year there, their 3-point field goal attempt ratio was higher than it's been under Ed Cooley at Providence by a significant margin. So yeah, there's going to be a style change. It's going to look a lot different at Providence on the court. So we'll see. It's an inexperienced guy. I know a lot of people have said you're kind of getting him. You're getting him early. You're getting him now before he is really that hot commodity. And he hasn't been anywhere longer than 2 years because he keeps getting promoted. He keeps getting hired at new places. And that's, I think, if you're a Providence fan, some alarm bells start to go off when you hear that because you're worried about the next coach leaving. But if Kim English is getting hired away that quickly from Providence, it means the Friars have been pretty good in the meantime.
Completely agree, Matt.
Yeah. Any other thoughts here on Kim English? Otherwise, we're going right to the transfer portal to wrap this up.
Yeah, go portal.
Well, we know Floyd is staying, right?
Yes.
Reed. Yep.
Reed's staying.
Donovan Santoro is an incoming recruit. He is staying committed, and 2 George Mason players have already transferred up to the Friars. One of them, Justin Fernandez, was the top recruit to go to George Mason since 2011. And then the other one, Oduro, the center, was their best player by far at George Mason last season.
Oduro is really good. Yeah.
Back-to-back all A10 the last 2 years. So definitely something to watch out for Providence fans.
He tested the NBA waters after his junior year there, too. So he has that athleticism.
How many years of eligibility does he have left?
Just the one. Grad transfer.
One and done.
Yeah. So he'll come in, and that's a position, no Ed Croswell, no Clifton Moore next year for the Friars. They had nothing at center, regardless of what else was going to happen in the portal. Jaden Pierre now gone. A couple of recruits coming in down the pike are also gone down to Georgetown. That's going to be a whole other thing. I think we'll get into that stuff on a later episode when we really hit the off season here. But I do want to wrap up with the general portal stuff. We got some new rules here. The NCAA coming down, basically saying you don't get to transfer twice and get a waiver because of a coaching change, which is particularly interesting for 3 schools in the Big East at the moment who may be looking at some 2-time transfers, wondering what's going to go on. Ryan, I think you had a list of all the guys that could potentially impact.
Yeah, so I got by my count, 7 guys. 3 from Georgetown, which would be Primo Spears, who came from Duquesne, Brandon Murray, and Bradley Ezewiro, both came from LSU. All 3 of them came last year. So they potentially will not want to leave Georgetown.
And I think all 3 are in the portal, correct?
Yes. These are only guys that are currently in the portal that
Okay.
if they leave, they will have to sit out a year. Trey Jackson was a freshman at Missouri, which I kind of forgot until I looked it up. Your buddy there, Jared Bynum.
He's a grad transfer now, so he would not apply to him.
So he won't. You get the waiver for the grad transfer year still. And then Philmon Gebrewit from DePaul was a JUCO transfer, and Zach Wrightsell from Marquette was a JUCO transfer. Although Wrightsell knew the new rules when he entered, so it might not affect him.
Yeah, it's interesting. And then for Providence, you look at Devin Carter, Corey Floyd, and Bryce Hopkins. There's a trio of guys who would potentially be impacted, who might have to sit a year. And I think especially for Devin Carter and Bryce Hopkins, 2 guys looking at the NBA, I don't think they're going to want to sit a year. So that may keep them in Providence regardless of what they're feeling right now.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah, if Hopkins wants to leave, he's just going to go pro. I cannot fathom a universe where Bryce Hopkins doesn't play next year.
No, he's too good a player, too good a prospect to go sit a year. So we shall see what happens there. My final question for you guys, we talk about the portal, and there's a lot going on there. So I want to let you guys kind of pick and choose what you're thinking about. Tommy, I think we'll come to you first here. The question is, what has caught your eye in the transfer portal in the first couple of weeks as we're starting to get into April?
April, yeah. Wow. March really flew by. Best month of the year. I mean, being a Villanova guy, this one's going to be an easy one here. Justin Moore and Villanova. The transfer portal, I mean, every day there's a new rumor. He's going to Ohio State. He's going to North Carolina. He's going to Syracuse. I hear a new school literally almost every day. Just my gut feeling, I don't have any inside information here. I don't think Justin Moore plays another college basketball game. I think he goes pro. I think that would be the smartest move for his career. I don't know if he knows what he's going to do yet, but at the end of the day, it's completely up to him. He doesn't owe this Villanova team anything. But look for that news to come out, because once it does, the chips are going to start falling. Some names you got to be on the lookout for on the Villanova side. I guess literally everybody nowadays, because the portal is the landscape changing every day. But Eric Dixon, someone to keep an eye on. Trey Patterson, former 4-star recruit, has been struggling to find his way onto the court. Nana Njoku, Jordan Longino. These are guys that you got to recruit your own players almost as a college coach nowadays. But once Justin Moore makes his decision, it's going to open the door for a lot more of these guys. Definitely something I got my tweet notifications on for this week.
Tommy is very prepared for that Justin Moore news, and definitely, he's been the guy to watch at Villanova for a number of reasons for 12 months now, from the injury concerns and not knowing what he was going to do, and then when he's going to come back, and now the transfers. It's been a lot of question marks around that name now for a little bit. Chris, we'll come to you. What are you looking at in the portal these days?
Yeah, Jeremiah Oden committed to DePaul, and I think he's actually sneaky good. Wyoming had a weird year last year, and things just didn't really work out for Jeff Linder. But after the last third of the year, and especially after Max Agbonkpolo, Jake Kyman, and Ethan Anderson got kicked off the team over there, Oden started playing really good. He had 28 against Nevada, and then 17 on 7 of 15 shooting against San Diego State, 2 tournament teams in their last 3 games. I think he could be a massive piece for DePaul next year. He's 6'8", kind of a stretch 4 type of guy. He could do a lot of things well.
And that's a DePaul team that's losing a lot of guys too. They kind of came on strong at the end of the year in the Big East tournament, and people forget the fact a lot of the guys behind that run will not be on that team next year. So huge to get a guy like that. Ryan, we'll have you wrap us up here. What are you looking at?
I've just been really interested in seeing some of the big names that have hit the portal. We had Caleb Love hit the portal the other day. He, became a national celebrity when he almost led that UNC team to a national championship 2 years ago. Hit one of the biggest shots in University of North Carolina history. He's in the portal. Kalal Ware from Oregon is in the portal. He's a former 5-star recruit, 7-footer NBA prospect. Sure, there's some I'm forgetting off the top of my head, but you're starting to see some of these really big 5-star recruits that things aren't working out for, and they can change the landscape of college basketball with one decision and turn a team that's, potentially not even an NCAA tournament team into a Final Four caliber team. So it'll be interesting to see where these big pieces land.
One of the names that stuck out to me when it comes to like the former high recruited guys was Jaden Epps at Illinois. He is a player that formerly committed to Providence, and Ed Cooley back in 2021, or it might have been 2020 that he committed. It was during COVID. He had not been able to visit any of the schools, and once he could visit schools, he reopened his recruiting, ended up going to Illinois. He's out at Illinois. Could he end up at Georgetown and reunite with Ed Cooley? The Ed Cooley special, re-recruiting somebody for the second time. We saw it work out for the most part for the Friars this year. Could work out for the Hoyas next season.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really interesting. We've never seen in college basketball where these kids can make decisions, where they're already established players, and they can make one decision that's going to completely change the national picture on college basketball. So it's definitely worth having your tweet notifications on for.
Tommy, higher or lower 10% chance Kerr Kriisa goes to Xavier?
10%? You could add another 0. I'd be confident.
You really think so?
Yeah,
I'm with Tommy on this one. I think he ends up there. Yeah.
I hope not, man. I like rooting for Xavier. That would be a bummer.
Yeah. I'll wrap this up with what I'm looking at here, and it's 2 schools. That's Xavier and St. John's. The mass exodus of players from both of these programs, I think, is very interesting. We saw St. John's today. Colby King, AJ Storr, and Omar Stanley. They're all going to be heading out the door. I don't think we've seen Andre Curbello's name out there, which is interesting because he is somebody that I think now would need a waiver to go somewhere else. This would be his second transfer because the coaching change there at St. John's is not going to help him out this time. Rick Pitino, it seems like, has basically told guys, hey, I don't want you here. There's not going to be a role for you on this team. Go somewhere else, which is crazy given how good AJ Storr was at points last season. So new things happening there in Queens. And then Xavier, a trio of guys who came off the bench. Cesar Edwards, Kiki Tandy, and I think Deontay Miles, all in the portal now. You add to that the fact that a lot of the starting lineups is probably not going to be back. We're going to get some decisions on those guys. Xavier could very well be Desmond Claude, Cam Kraft, the incoming freshman, and we'll see next season. I think Sean Miller's going to have to hit the portal. Maybe Kerr Kriisa. Maybe he's the missing piece there as they rebuild that lineup there on the Parkway in Cincinnati.
Now, I'm glad that you mentioned everything going on. Just to tie this all together, the Justin Moore, the mass exodus at St. John's, the tweet notifications. Joe tipped it. I got beef with you today. I have my tweet notifications on. I mean, I know you're in my DMs, Joe. We talk, but don't tweet out the significant Big East transfer news and then have it be everyone on St. John's. We know, that's not significant. They're all gone. Rick said, "Give me Soriano, and I'm bringing in 11 new guys." We've known this. Oh my God, I had to take an extra anxiety medicine at 2:00. I was prepared for Justin Moore to go play for Georgetown or something. I don't know. I was preparing for the worst, but
I assumed that was going to be a Devin Carter, Bryce Hopkins thing.
Yeah, that was anxiety for sure.
I was at the laundromat trying to do my laundry, and I saw that notification. I was just sitting there, refreshing, waiting for 10 minutes. But I
texted you. I got the notification in the middle of a text with you. We were talking about something else, and I just all caps. It was St. John.
Tipton bomb.
He knew exactly what he was doing there.
Oh yeah,
I respect the hustle. I respect it.
He's so good at what he does. Shout out him. We don't have actual beef, but
no, he's
good. How much time does he spend in Photoshop, man?
All of it. All of his time.
all of the times. Yeah.
I had $1 million idea. This new like Chat GPT thing. Just put Justin Moore breaking, type it in, have it like pop out a different Photoshop thing for you. Nobody steal that. That's my idea. Putting it out there on the airwaves. Save Joe Tipton a lot of time.
He'll just type into the AI Justin Moore in a UNC uniform, and it'll.
Oh my god, I'd throw up.
I'm gonna send you some some AI generated images later, Tommy, just to mess with you.
Please don't.
All right, I think that's gonna do it for this episode. A lot happening in the Big East, and when we see you next, it'll be the off season. But as we know, until was it May 31st when the portal closes? I think that's when it is now. There's gonna be a lot of drama, so you're gonna want to stick with us through that. Next time we talk, though, UConn may be a national champion, may have a trophy coming home to the Big East. We shall see. For Ryan, Chris, and Tommy, I'm Matt St. Jean. Read our blog, follow us on Twitter, subscribe on YouTube. Hey, if you don't subscribe on YouTube, you're not going to see when we go live. You're not going to get to see Ryan flashing the UConn sweatshirt when I said that. You want to be there for that. So subscribe to our YouTube channel so you can see Tommy with his Villanova one too. Yeah, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for listening. UCLA.